Trump tells aides to look for big spending cuts in second term, seeding confusion about budget prior. President Trump has instructed aides to prepare for sweeping budget cuts if he wins a second term in the White House, 5 people briefed on the discussions said, a move that would dramatically reverse the big spending approach he adopted during his first 30 months in office. Trump's advisors say he will be better positioned to crack down on spending and shrink or eliminate certain agencies after next year, particularly if Republicans regain control of the House of Representatives. But this second-term ambition is already seeding confusion about how the White House should approach the current slate of negotiations, in which some conservatives want Trump to push for spending restraint. Instead, Trump is advocating swiftly lifting the federal debt ceiling, which would allow for more spending and borrowing. Trump, who with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin has said the debt ceiling needs to be increased by early September to avoid a potentially catastrophic default. That puts enormous. Mnuchin has forged several parts of a new budget agreement with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi of California. But the talks bogged, with Mnuchin pushing for a deal and the other advisors, largely Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney and Acting Budget Director Russell Vought, seeking big cuts. The White House has lacked a consistent argument during the debates, something that is likely to spill into a second term if Trump is re-elected. Even some Republicans appear exasperated over the differing views. Senate Appropriations Committee Chairman Richard C. Shelby R. Alabama told reporters that, "I think he should listen to the Secretary," Shelby said, speaking of Trump. Democrats have seized on this inconsistency and dug in, and they appear unlikely to capitulate during the current debate, in part because Trump has not signaled a willingness to back up demands from Vaught's office for the spending cuts. Now, neither muddying matters further, Trump has not instructed aides as to how sweeping he wants future budget cuts in his second term to be. For example, his apathy toward cutting spending has helped drive the deficit to about $1 trillion this year, a sharp contrast to the GOP demands for a balanced budget during the Obama administration. Trump himself has mischaracterized the government's fiscal problems on numerous occasions, alleging that the Obama administration is to blame for rising debt levels. The deficit did. White House officials have not stuck to a consistent approach in dealing with the budget, in part because of Trump's unwillingness to fight for cuts. Several months ago, White House officials released a budget plan that would have slashed spending at multiple agencies. But they jettisoned the internal White House split over how hard to push for budget cuts is a precursor for what aides expect will be a central battle if Trump wins re-election. Trump's aides some Republicans have said Trump's refusal, so far, to pursue big changes to entitlement programs such as Medicare and Social Security have made it nearly impossible for him to fix the budget. They have never proposed serious entitlement reforms, and he has said quite clearly that he won't, said Douglas Holtz-Eaton, a Republican and former Congressional Budget Office director. Until they do, there are a number of reasons debt levels are projected to keep climbing, and some of the biggest ones have to do with demographics that political leaders can't control. Medicare and social budget experts have said the best way to control costs on these programs would be to phase in changes over time to avoid abrupt disruptions in benefits. But policymakers, Trump has also received mixed signals from Capitol Hill. Former House Speaker, meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky has advised Trump. Several conservative lawmakers expressed skepticism that a push to reduce deficits could gain traction in Congress, even if the Trump administration throws its weight behind such an effort. Senior: "My experience around here about cutting the budget is that it's like going to heaven. Everyone wants to go, but nobody is quite ready to take the trip," said Senior. John Neely Kennedy. Trump promised during his 2016 campaign to eliminate the government's debt after 8 years in office, a pledge top advisors later said was a mistake. But Trump has not. His aides have proposed budget cuts numerous times during his first term in office, only to have Trump back away and pursue spending increases instead. These spending increase. The US government spends more money than it brings in through revenue, and that gap is referred to as the deficit. The government borrows. It's an urgent problem, and the longer you wait to fix it the harder it will be, said Michael A. Peterson, chairman and chief executive of the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, which advocates deficit reduction, citing the growing price tag on debt interest payments. Trump has said these measures were necessary to help grow the economy and rebuild the military, but they have also added markedly to the debt. White House official. Particularly troubling to budget experts is the steep drop in taxes paid by businesses under the law, which lowered the corporate tax rate from 3.5% to 2.1%. The year before so far, companies have paid even lower levels of corporate taxes this year compared with 2018, with 60 Fortune 500 companies paying no federal taxes at all, according to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, a left-leaning think tank. Republican lawmakers and the Trump administration predicted during the debate over the 2017 tax law that the legislation would increase federal revenue by spurring additional economic growth, and the Treasury Department released a one-page analysis projecting the law would cut the deficit by $300 billion over 10 years. The economy has grown faster since the tax cuts went into effect, but it has already shown signs of slowing this year. Trump and other white
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.